Afternoon, how you guys doing? It's been a long 2 days. Most of you, I guess, have been here for both days, so I think it's been a bit hectic. Lots of people talking at you about many different things, maybe lots of notes taken, inspiration to do new things. I just want to get an idea of who we've got in the room. How many designers do we have here? All right, how many developers? Welcome, welcome. Product owners, product manager type people. Very, very good. Well done for attending. Anybody who has not been mentioned, have we got executives, managers? What are you guys doing? Oh, educators, most important. Thank you very much for rocking up. Jason and Marco were saying we needed more of you. Thank you very much for coming through. Cool. So I just want to share with you a few ideas about stuff. But one of the first things I would like to do is, I really love music, and I know that the energy is going to be kind of chilling out just after lunch on the last day. So I wanted to play you guys a song. The Roots are my favorite hip hop band, and they made, using classroom instruments, a remake of Adele's new single, which is pretty cool. Hopefully I have the audio.
Hello, it's me. I was wondering if after all these years you'd like to be, to go over everything. They say the time's supposed to heal ya. I ain't done much healing. Hello, can you hear me? I'm in California dreaming about who we used to be when we were younger and free. I've forgotten how it felt before the world that I made just such a difference between us and the million miles. Out from the other side, I must have fallen down the time to you. Sorry, everything that I loved when I told you never seemed to be wrong. Hello, how are you? It's so typical of me to talk about myself. I'm sorry, I hope that you will. Did you ever make it out of that town when nothing ever happened? Don't say that the both of us will run out of time. So out from the other side, I must have fallen down the stairs to you. Sorry for everything that I loved when I told you never seemed to be home. Out from the other side, at least I can say that I've tried. You, sorry for breaking my heart. It's not a feeling that to tear you apart
I love that. One of the things, so you was talking earlier on about music, and let me just unplug this because it seems to break stuff. One of the things I love about music is the idea that, and musicians, and the inspiration I take from that is that when you're really good at what you do, it doesn't matter what you've got to work with, you can still throw down. Like I was playing a banana, right? Other guy was playing an onion. I don't know if you saw, you know. So when Nikki talks about music, for me, that's that's what I take from it. Musicians have to have this crazy work ethic to make stuff. There is something special about CD quality sound. when you ship a CD, there will be no updates. When it's out, right? You have to have a level of quality to what you're doing. That means that you can't go back. As software developers and people who design for the screen, now that CD-ROM has gone away, I think we've started to kind of fall into a situation where it's okay sometimes to kind of do things half-heartedly because we can ship an update tomorrow. And sometimes that's okay. Perfection is the enemy of progress, but there has to be a balance. There has to be a level at which we get to. And being professional about what we do and being good at what you do kind of it counts to that. So that's kind of the thing I take from music. So anyway, I had come here to kind of talk about motion and meaning in UI design. And then this morning someone sent me this. Just to clarify, that's not me. So don't believe everything you read on the interwebs. Apparently this was on one of the apps for kind of UX South Africa. That's a part. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say thank you. The three guys, a guy called Theo is wearing a cap, he's running around. Iggy just introduced me, and another guy called Nathan. These guys are not UX people. They're just three guys who really care about getting people together and learning about a thing. And I just wanted to shout them out. I don't know if they're still in here, but thank you very much, guys. We appreciate that. It's pretty awesome. Yes. So this is me. I head up the design team at Standard Bank Digital. You can find me on the interwebs doing different stuff. The talk I wanted to give, as I said, this is about motion and UI design, but actually the truth is I do not know anything. Well, I don't know much about motion and UI design. The fact is that I'm learning this. A few months ago, I started to try and understand how do we improve our products, and looking at things that were being made, motion in design seemed to be a very important thing, and I started to look at it. And I've learned a few things that I want to share with you. So this talk is actually more aptly should be called something like "The Time When I Discovered How Lame I Am at UI Motion Design." The truth is, I'm still learning, and this is an important part of what we do. As designers, as UX designers specifically, we are always learning. You're always going onto a new project with a new domain, and you have to start to understand. You go from a finance project to a health project. You have to start to understand the context of what's going on there. But also, which is part of what I want to talk about today, is that the tools that we use are also changing. The technology is becoming faster, the screens can do more. And we have to keep learning what is going on. So we are all learning. And in talking about learning, I'm always fascinated by the idea of education. I spent a lot of time in school, and I used to complain, me and my best friend used to complain that after 18 years of school, the one thing that we were hardly ever taught was how to learn. We were taught this model of knowledge, which is that you have gone to school and you read books to get stuff out of that into the green bit. Fill the vessel. It's a vessel to be filled is what your head is. And the more you have that green thing, the more you know. But actually, the idea of learning is slightly different, which is that there are things that you don't know. That's your blind spot. You have no idea that this thing exists. There are things that you don't know. So someone will come and say to you the theory of relativity. So you know that thing exists. You may not know how to explain it or anything like that, but you know that it exists. And you know that you don't know about it. And that's okay, right? And then there is the things that you know, which is the knowledge that you will spout. And as Carrie was saying earlier on, sometimes it's dangerous because what you think you don't actually know. So this idea of learning is important. We have to understand as designers that sometimes there is a lot of this stuff. Today, the stuff I want to share with you is what happened to me when I discovered how little I knew about motion and UI design. And the stuff that I've kind of tried to put into that category. So I don't have much green stuff about motion and UI design, but hopefully we can kind of pretend that we're in a classroom. I came from the back, I was sitting among you, so I'm just sharing a class project, some stuff that I'm learning. I'm not an authority on this. Don't quote me on the stuff that you will see, but hopefully we'll be able to kind of take away some tips, some things to think about, and hopefully you will have stuff that you don't have a blind spot about motion and UI design, but maybe some stuff that you don't know about. And I'll give you some links and stuff that you can look at so that you can go and learn some more about that. So that will be kind of the approach for today. I am not an authority on what I want to speak about. Those guys I mentioned, if you want a refund, you can talk to Iggy if you want some authority. All right, cool. So what happened was we were working on our product and we're building apps and websites for the bank. And well, for the bank's customers. And what we started to understand is that there is this idea of slickness, and there is a conversation that you hate to have with your boss. I don't know if he's in here. Or you hate to have with your customers and your clients, where they say stuff like, I really want it to pop. Or they'll say things like, I want it slick. I just want that one-click experience like Amazon. Or they'll say, can you just make it look like it was made by Apple? That's what I really, really want from you. You hate having that conversation. But the truth is that secretly, I actually do want that. I would love to have made a thing that looks like it came from Apple. I really, really would. And so part of what I did was then to start looking at things that have been made to understand, well, how do you get into understanding what that is? So again, from listening to music, so if you come to our design studio, sometimes there's a guy I work with called Chan, and he listens to hip hop as well, and you will hear us talking about beats and samples and the stuff that Iggy was talking about. And one thing about hip hop that many people don't know is that hip hop is one of the most self-referential art forms. This is the idea that hip hop loves to talk about hip hop. So the majority of most songs that you will hear, the majority of the content, the lyrical content, is about the rapper, what he has, how good he is at rapping, how bad other people are, and how great the beats are. And then sometimes there's other stuff. Right? Hip hop loves itself to death, right? And so what happens is that as a listener, you tend to kind of, when you're listening for those things. Is he actually as good as the other guys are? Or is he better? This idea of introspection, of breaking a thing down to understand its base elements, what is it made of, is a thing that I bring to design as well. So one of the things that I hated when I used to work at agency was when you're working in a team and then someone just sends out an email or a Slack message and says, they send a link to some website they found and go, this is cool, or this is really interesting. So what, right? What about it is interesting? What about it is cool? Is everything about it amazing? Or is there one specific thing that we need to look at that we can take away from that and turn into our product? That's the kind of breaking down that I do when I'm looking at pieces of work. And so this is what I started to do with the things that I was wishing to make. I would look at stuff and go, I would love to have made that. I wanted to understand the essence of UI slickness, if you will, to see if we could distill that and then increase its presence in our product and figure out how we can make that. So I looked at some stuff and I'll share some of that with you. So I looked at this. This is a thing called Stripe, which is it's kind of like a PayPal type thing. And they're demoing how it works here. So this is their website where they show off the product that they have. That looks great. I loved how that flows. They've also done some things to help us to understand. And I'll go back and I'll rewind it, and then I'll tell you the things that I was looking for, the things that I found, the things that I've learned to look for when you're looking at motion and UI design. Another thing that I looked at was just the Mac desktop. So this is Safari actually on my Mac. So it moves very quickly, but you can zoom if you just pinch, and that's how you see how many tabs are open. And I do this. This is not looping. That's literally me just doing this back and forth over and over again, trying to understand what is going on there. What does it look like? And I'll share again the insights that I had about that. This is on the Mac desktop. When you work with multiple desktops, you're just swiping back and forth. See that one where it flies over to the side? Where is the Nest desktop going to appear? It becomes very plain. They put it right in place. You know that the Nest desktop is right over here, right? But they didn't have to tell you that. The way it flew across to the side kind of helps you to understand. That's what we talk about when motion and meaning are kind of related in UI. Here's one from Google Maps. Very simple one, how they go from the details to the search and back to the details again. And again, I'll rewind it later on and we can break it down. So the essence of what I found is that motion and animation contributes to UI slickness. I'm not saying that when you make things move, you're going to make something that's slick. All I'm saying is that there's a lot for us to be thinking about when we are making stuff, and when we're trying to achieve that level of slickness. So once I saw and started doing that, I went into kind of overdrive, and then I started looking at a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dribble. So Dribble is another site where you find kind of designers showing off the work that they've done. You will spend days looking. Each of these things are little bits of UIs that people are imagining. It's not real software, but it's ideas that people are having about how to animate and make motion. And you literally can spend days looking at this and understanding what's possible out there with the technology. This is a site called Captivate, and I'm going to come back to this later on, where there's a lady called Ali, and what she does is that she actually captures the motion that she finds on iOS apps. She makes a recording of it, and then she posts it up here, and then she categorizes them according to, is this a UI animation? Is it an interactive animation? Is it a transition? Is it content? And what she's actually doing is classifying real stuff in software. So again, you start to get examples and you start to understand, oh, okay, so this is how people are using swipes. This is how people are presenting content. This is how people are doing transitions. So Captivate is a great resource to look at. I was also playing in CodePen and on Stack Overflow in a bunch of places, trying to start to understand what code can you start using to actually make these transitions. And so in this particular one, it's called Gradient Wave. It's an animation that actually allows you to kind of move between different colors of gradients. And so it's a simple thing. But this is the kind of stuff that I was doing in the research that I was doing. And I'll put up these resources so that you can have a look at them yourselves. So it's kind of the research work that I was getting into. So in doing this, I was trying to learn, trying to understand how to get good at a thing. And I learned 3 important things. The first one is that I suck at motion design for UI. Because I started trying to make this. I started breaking up the UI of our app and trying to actually make this stuff. I spent kind of weeks trying to make things. I didn't even show them to my team. I just pressed delete. It was really bad because I was making the product worse. Because what I also learned, the other 2 things I learned is that it's easy to get started, but it's really, really hard to make it look good. And so there's kind of this, and this is quandary where we now live in a world where sometimes you can just download a thing, right? So we all do this thing where you Google a new skill. I want to do motion design. You find a whole bunch of tutorials on Stack Overflow everywhere, right? Magic happens here. You're an expert, right? This happens a lot, right? And so this is what I was doing, and I realized that I was falling into the trap of kind of the modern digital design. We do this a lot, right? And I'm just going to go on a bit of a tangent here and talk about what Marco and Jason were sharing with us yesterday, which is this idea that we need to understand how good we really are, right? So I really love the research that they did, because what they did was try and help us to understand as a practice, as a skill, and as, that is available in the market. How good are we really, and how good do we think we are, and how good do the people who are paying for our skills think we are, and how do we judge each other on skill? It's a really, really important thing to know, because if you don't, we start to misrepresent ourselves. So Jason was telling me of an example where somebody went to a company and said, I do this UX design thing. The company spent 6 months at some crazy hourly rate with this person, and in the end, that person couldn't actually have delivered what they were promising anyway. And so in the end, that company thinks that UX is rubbish, right? But that's not the truth. It's just somebody who was had done a bit of this, went and sold it, and then, it's kind of us making us look a little bit bad. But I had done some of this, and it wasn't a good thing for me to have done. But what I've started to understand as well is also that to learn, you have to have the mindset of a learner. You cannot have the mindset of an expert. And it's really weird to be somebody who's been practicing for 12, 14 years, and then you come to a thing and then you go, oh, I have to rewind and pretend like I don't know this thing. Well, actually, I don't know this thing. But how do I get the mindset of a learner when someone is paying me money to be an expert at a thing? The same way that I've come here, you come to hear experts talk about a thing, but I'm actually saying I'm an amateur at this. But I'd like to share with you how amateurish I am at it, right? So there's an important thing there, which is that if you've played music, for example, I love music, but I can't play much. But I started playing the bass, and I learned enough to know how bad I was, right? So, and there's this thing about you have to have a certain level of professional maturity, personal maturity, to be able to admit that you do not know how to do a thing, right? And money will tempt you to say, but I can. But you're putting yourself and maybe others in danger when you do that. So it takes something to be able to say that. My favorite rapper, J Live, has got this line where he says, I heard amateurs keep doing it until they get it right. But professionals do it so much we can't get it wrong. To be good at what you do, to be a senior, you have to practice, 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 until you can't get it wrong, not to get it right. So this idea of practice came kind of into sharp focus a few weeks ago. We were fortunate enough, Tracy and I were fortunate enough to go to the States, and we met a guy who had worked at Apple. He was telling us about his experience over there, and it put kind of a whole bunch of things in perspective for me, because he was saying that iOS 7 on iOS phone and tablet was designed by a team of 12 people. All of iOS 7 was 12 people. He alone designed Safari for tablet and phone by himself, the UX and the UI, right? That's how they work. Those cats are pros at what they do. So when we say we are senior, what do we actually mean, right? Now, I'm not saying that kind of to put folks down. I'm just trying to say that there's some perspective around what we do. And we actually have to practice a lot to know where we're at. Now, he's been designing for about 14, 15 years at the highest levels. We don't have the design schools, as Jason and them were highlighting. We literally do not have the jobs sometimes that ask us to be good enough, or that challenge us enough to actually develop the skills. So that's the reality of our market, and we can't kind of balk about that. But within that context, how do we need to think about being an amateur, being a pro, and the path between those two things, right? There's a level of maturity that, as a practice, as a community, we kind of need to get to. And we have to agree that actually, we're not at this level, and we need to actually put in structures to do the work to get to a certain place. Didn't mean to sound like such a bummer. But anyway, I know that I'm an amateur at a thing, and I still have a lot to learn about UI motion design. So in getting started, what I did was to look at, there were several things I looked at, but one of the things was also material design. So material design came out, and they had this idea that software is made of paper. That's kind of the central premise of kind of the material design. So material, paper is the material, and pieces of paper can stack on top of each other. So your windows, your modal windows, your buttons, all of those things, they sit on top of each other. And this is the metaphor. What that meant was that they were saying that when you touch a piece of glass and there is a piece of paper underneath it, the way that piece of paper moves has to be in accordance with physics of the real world, right? So a simple thing like using shadow and light. When you use material design, when you're using Google Plus or something like that, you will see how they use shadows, because they are saying the physics of the real world must apply to software. Those are the constraints of their design. So, for example, pieces of paper in material design do not flip like this, because actually they are between the glass. So you do not get flips. They don't do that. The paper expands, it contracts, but it does not flip. Those are the rules that they've put into the design that they created. The other thing they added to their new design system is this idea that motion has meaning. So what they're saying there is that when things move, in fact, they say it much better than I do. In the world of material design, motion describes spatial relationships, functionality, and intention with beauty and fluidity. So what they're saying there is that, so with the idea of spatial relationships, I was showing you those dashboards earlier on, and they were side by side, right? The way you move from one dashboard to another, the motion tells you that there is something else. That is what they're describing through their motion design. It's how things work. They have this concept where if you press a button that's going to open a window, the window should open from that button. From the middle of that button, it should grow out to show the person the relationship between the button open to this window. And when you close it, it comes back down again. This is the idea of motion and meaning that they were kind of describing. And I found this quite interesting and inspirational because I hadn't really thought about the relationship between motion and meaning. So they have their style guide, material style guide specification that you can look at, google.com/design. There's a lot to learn there. Another resource is Salesforce. So Salesforce has just recently released the Lightning design system, which they'll be using for all their products. And their talk and their content around motion design as well is really, really good for you to look at if you're starting to learn this stuff, if you're starting to make this stuff. In fact, the Salesforce stuff actually has the code. So if you're looking to turn this stuff to use it in your software, have a look at the Lightning design system. It's a great resource in terms of trying to learn this stuff. So what I took from that is that there are several things that, what I'm taking from this as I continue to learn, is several things. You can use motion to attract a user's attention, right? So when things come onto the screen while you're in the middle of something, sometimes it's in a good way, sometimes in a bad way, but you can use motion to attract attention. You can use it to show continuity between states. So, and I'll go into this in a bit. When I was showing you that box on Stripe, when it changes state from having 3 fields to having 5 fields in it, it animates out. It doesn't just change state. By it growing like this, you can tell that the new fields are still part of the same form, right? It's not that users will get confused, it's just much easier to understand. And that's the difference, is that motion may not kind of bring meaning that didn't exist before, but it just reduces the cognitive overhead. Don't make me think, right? That's where motion can help us. It shows the relationship between objects. So I was talking about the relation between a button and the modal window that it opens and coming back. That's the kind of stuff you get from motion design. And also character and personality. So this is the idea that you can kind of make things look and feel according to your brand or according to a certain brand, or make people laugh, or the emotion stuff that Carrie was talking about. Motion design can bring you this more than the colors and the symbols that you would put statically on a page could do. So let's look at some of this stuff. So here is an example of using motion to draw attention. So when you're on the site, and I'm sure there's several kind of executions of this, but when you're on the site, for a few seconds, you get this thing that says, how can you help, right? And then as soon as that one is done, there's another one where a guy pops up and he says, hi, right? Some would consider this evil, but depending on what your business is trying to achieve, that can be valuable, that can be useful, because what's happening is that the customer is trying to read this stuff. This will appear in the peripheral vision. What this takes advantage of is a system that is developed biologically in humans, which is the idea that the areas, so I think we have about 108 degrees in which you see, so that's kind of your focal range from side to side. But at the periphery, the frame rate is much higher. And this was designed to allow you to focus on a thing if you were hunting. But if there was a lion that was going to eat you from the side, you needed to see that really, really quickly. And so that's what this does. The focus at the middle of your eye is right here, but this stuff can really make a difference. And the speed at which you make this appear on a page can, it can be used for good or evil. I'm not sure, but it's just to understand. You can use it to grab attention. So if you're using iOS, for example, what you'll find is that if you get a notification, it'll slide out here, right? If you're using a Google product using material design in this day and age, what you'll find is that a lot of Google products, the notifications pop up in this box, right at the bottom. They slide up from the bottom, and I'll show you an example of that. This is the kind of idea of saying you can use motion to draw attention. Rather than just making something appear on a page, you can make it grow on a page and then make it appear as well. So you can do both of those things, right? Another example, so we were looking at this earlier on, so I just want to scrub through this so that we can kind of look at some of the detail of this. So the first thing is that you can see next to show me right there. It's going to stop. It's too far, of course it is. So you can see that show me, this button here. It's just kind of saying, that's much more subtle than the other one, but it's looping and it's saying kind of click here, right? That again is using motion to kind of grab attention. Yes, a customer will know that that's a button, right? But you can be a little bit pushy without being offensive, depending on how you do that. If that was moving any faster, you would hate that because it will be doing this, right? But the rate at which they're making this pulse, that makes a difference to how you think about that brand. Come on. In fact, you know what? Let me do this differently. Sorry, I'm just going to go to my desktop. Because I think, everything's going wrong. In fact, all my desktops are gone. So they're making that animate really slowly. So it's just bouncing really, really lightly, right? It's nice and elegant. So when I clicked it, then things start happening, right? It starts moving across. So now here, there is a concept around timing and orchestration, because there are many things that are going to move, but they move in a very specific order, right? So what you will see is that you've got the X in the corner, this phone and that are kind of moving at the same time. They're gonna go away. So these are things that are gonna disappear. So they start moving first. The thing that's gonna stay on the page is the content. So they make that move a little bit slow, right? So let me show you this. Right? And then they bring in the next bit of content. The heading comes in first, the content comes in later. Then as soon as the customer starts typing, they wait for you to do your typing. Then let me play this because it's really cool to watch. Look at what happens in the card number. It's a really, really subtle thing, but that Visa symbol it animated in. It didn't just appear, it wasn't always there. So what they wait for is for you to punch in the first few digits, right? They're doing a validation in the background to say, what kind of card is this? That will allow them to know whether it's Amex or MasterCard, whatever it is. And as soon as they know, they will clarify with you that it's a Visa or a MasterCard. But the way that this comes in, it's really, really subtle, but it's huge amounts of attention to detail. It comes in from the side, and it bounces just a tiny little bit. I mean, the mind boggles at how much attention they've paid to making this stuff. But this is the kind of thing that's worth looking at when you're saying that people are making great products. This is the kind of thing that you will see out there. But it takes some time, takes some attention. You break it down, you record it, you play it back over and over again, and still you start to understand, what's going on and what makes it good. So they do this thing. And then when you click Remember Me, that grows from the bottom of the screen as well. Right? It's a slow animation. It's this kind of stuff that I'm finding on the web. And this is when we look at things, we say, is it looking slick? So in the specification, it will say, if customer clicks Remember Me, show stuff, right? As a designer, you have an opportunity, right? This is the opportunity to say, do we animate this thing in? And if we are going to animate it in, how are we going to do that? How do we make it look really, really good? So this is kind of the stuff that's inspiring me at this point. So let me bring out Google stuff. So this is going to be awkward. Sorry, please bear with me. I didn't count on having many, many monitors. So the second one, Google Maps. So again, what you see here is this idea of orchestration. So it starts at the top. When I click the close button, right, they start shrinking the big box. Let me move this out the way. But at the same time, this little earth needs to go from there and it's going to land there. The distance that it has to move compared to the amount of distance that this box has to move to disappear is much further. But somehow they're thinking about, okay, that is moving really, really quickly, that's moving really slowly. Meanwhile, the directions are kind of growing so that they can appear on the page. Right? So let me play that quickly. Then it comes back again. Again, it's that kind of stuff. That's the detail that you see in these animations that people are thinking about. And I'll talk more about timing and orchestration in a second. So there's a lot of these products where people are thinking about these things. This is another one of my favorites. So this is on Google Drive when you move a bunch of files into a folder. Check it out. You see that? So what happens is they all bundle up into one thing. There is no mystery about where all of those files have gone. They're now stuck to my mouse. Wherever my mouse goes, they go. There are 11 of them, right? And then what happens is when I move my mouse, they go there, then I'm going to drop them in the folder. And when I do, look at that, check that out. 11 times it's gonna happen, right? Now, here's what's interesting, some more orchestration. When I let go of the mouse and they start falling, if you look in the bottom left corner, at exactly the same time, can you see the working coming from the bottom? So that rocks up to tell me that we're moving your files across. When it's done, it becomes a very different thing, right? This is the stuff that we see every day. And we look at software and you go, no, what's going on there? I really like that, but I don't know how. That's the stuff that's worth looking at. All right, thank you, Vicky. You must keep me out. So those are the kinds of things that I'll be looking at. Then the last thing last example that I think I'll focus on is just this, which if you're a Mac user, you'll be familiar with. To bring character, when you kind of get your password wrong, it kind of says, got that wrong, right? Shakes a little bit. Those are the little things that bring the... So when people say, I want it to be delightful and all that kind of stuff, this is the kind of things that we need to be thinking about to kind of get to that level. So I'm going to have to rush through a few things, but I'll share this presentation online. So there's this thing called The Illusion of Life, a book that was written by these Disney animators, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Johnston. And they were talking to the people who were going to draw cartoons, which is where kind of the idea of motion on screen kind of came from a long time ago. And so there was this video that was made. So you'll have seen this thing.
The following has been paraphrased from The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Molly Johnston. Squash and stretch.
So this is the stuff that the guys at Disney think about when they make it. Not all of that makes sense in the idea of doing stuff on the UI, but there's a lot of it that still makes sense. So I was actually kind of inspired for this when I was reading this podcast. All y'all need to look at that. They've only got 7 episodes. They're the most polite people you've ever listened to, sometimes annoyingly polite. But they have a lot to say about motion and meaning, and it's definitely worth looking at and reading. So the things that they kind of in their podcast think about when they say that this is what from those 12 principles, what's still important to us when we do UI design. So timing and orchestration. So when I was showing you how and when things move, that's kind of timing and orchestration. When should a thing move? And when you have multiple things, how should they do that? Arcs don't move things in a straight line. So if you've ever used Flash, if you're using CSS, you'll see this ease in and ease out. That's trying to avoid a straight line. But there are dangers, many, many dangers to kind of doing that. Secondary action. So if you've ever used on iOS device, if you're looking in the Messages app, if you have multiple messages next to each other and you start scrolling, they don't all move at the same time. So you would see this in the carousel. Rather, one message will move, another one will bump into it, and they do this. That's secondary action. So if you ever have a list of things that are scrolling, think about this idea of secondary action, how you might make that work. So slow in, slow out, again, is similar to the easing. Staging, which is to say, how do you use animation to give something clarity or to give it focus? And then appeal, make it look beautiful. So I've looked at this and spoken about this example, we've done that. This is one we haven't looked at, a recent one, when that one made everybody go crazy, when Twitter changed the star to a heart. But it's not just a simple thing, right? They've kind of really thought about how it might look like and how it might work. So those are just some examples of how the principles of animation that came from Disney can be used and are still relevant in some of the UI design that we're doing. It's also very easy to get things wrong. So here's an example of when you have too much going on. I mean, it's only 2 of them, but when you've got too many things going on, you could create some challenges in the UI. I'm going to skip that, and I'll skip that too because he's kind of looking at me. So I've said to you that it's easy to get started. So there are some, I'll put these up, there are some links. So Motion and Meaning, the podcast, how to make curves, so for kind of easing, to get those right. So apparently the curves that iOS produces are actually really bad. So this guy's written a whole article about the mathematics and the physics that you need to get a curve that makes things look more natural, like in physics. How to sketch in Keynote. Keynote is an amazing motion UI prototyping app. It's worth looking at. There's an article called Stop Gratuitous UI Animation. It does what it says on the box. And there's a beginner's guide to doing this stuff. Reading and watching, so Captivate I've spoken about, Motion and Meaning, Dribble. This guy, Pascal, he's amazing at doing stuff. And there's a book called The Animator's Survival Kit. I will put it up and you'll be able to get it, and I'll make sure that these guys send it out for you so you can see it. There's an app called Pixate that Google just bought that's worth looking at. Keynote, I've mentioned, Framer.js for prototyping. Adobe, you've got a thing called Adobe Edge Animate. This is also worth doing. All of these you can get free trials of so that you can start trying this stuff. On Twitter, follow these cats. Ali, she's the product designer for Twitter Moments. Kinetic is how that's pronounced. He used to be a product designer for Twitter as well. Val Head, so she's a motion designer. This guy, Mike Rundle, is an amazing guy. He used to work at Apple. He knows a lot about kind of making things move and bounce. Literally, on his Twitter profile, he says, I like bouncy things. So he spends a lot of time thinking about the physics and how you can replicate that online. And this lady called Rachel, so she did kind of the motion design for the Salesforce design system. So she knows a lot about a lot as well. So like I said, I am still learning. We are all learning. Let's continue to learn about motion design. Go out there and try some stuff. Please. Thank you.